Hey everyone, welcome back, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us your thoughts in the comments. Today we're diving into a really interesting topic,
Yeah.
the world where science and spirituality come together.
Yeah, the intersection of science and spirituality. And we've got this fascinating story to guide us.
Yeah.
It's the case of Baba Abhay Singh, an IIT Bombay graduate.
It really is such a story that just captures your attention, right?
Absolutely.
Like someone who's steeped in, logic, reason, the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
engineering world, right? IIT, one of the best engineering schools in India.
Pop school.
Yeah, and he chooses this path that you often associate with,
Yeah.
intuition and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it raises so many questions about what truly fulfills us.
Right.
Abhay Singh was making, I think it was like 3 lakh a month in Canada.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah, big salary, very successful. But he describes this feeling of emptiness, this kind of profound emptiness. And he talks about it in interviews, and he says, a hankering to search for the truth.
Oh, wow.
So
So it's not just this man's story, but it's this bigger question about...
it's a much bigger question.
Yeah, the relationship between these two worlds.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot of really interesting material to dive into.
Yeah, we do.
We've got interviews with Baba Abhay Singh himself.
Right.
We've got all these articles analyzing scientists who have turned to spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And then some really philosophical explorations, through the lens of Indian philosophy with the darshanas.
Yeah, the Indian darshanas are fascinating.
So much here.
Yeah.
Let's
unpack all this.
with Abhay Singh's own words. Like, what does he have to say about all of this?
Yeah, so from the interviews that we've got with him, it's clear that his journey wasn't a straight line.
Right.
He talks about his IIT education,
Great.
his move to Canada, the complexities of his family relationships. He even talks about past struggles, with drinking and smoking.
Wow.
It really paints a picture of a man who was wrestling with a lot of inner turmoil,
Yeah.
despite this outward success that he had achieved.
I think he mentions a 4-year relationship he had
Yeah.
and this fear of marriage stemming from his parents'
It does.
troubled marriage.
Right.
So it seems like even back then he was kind of
Wrestling with
Yeah.
these big questions.
about happiness and purpose and all of that.
Totally, yeah. What really strikes me is the contrast between his past and his present.
Okay.
Now he just says, it's just Mahadev,
Oh, wow.
referring to the Hindu deity Shiva.
Right.
There's this sense of complete surrender to the spiritual path
Wow.
and this rejection of the material success that he was chasing before.
It's almost like he's saying, I've been down that road.
Totally.
It's no...
It didn't lead me where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
It didn't fulfill me.
So what was that turning point?
That's the question, right? What was
Yeah.
the turning point? One thing that stands out to me is his photography project,
Oh, yeah.
the last page notebook.
I read about that. That was really interesting.
It's really fascinating. So he focused on students in Kota, which, if you don't know, it's known for these intense coaching centers.
Engineering exams.
Yeah, for these big engineering exams.
Yeah.
And he used the last page to signalize the struggles and anxieties that these students are facing.
Wow.
Which seems to foreshadow his own search for meaning later on.
It's almost like he was already kind of tapping into that.
It's like he was already tuned into it,
Yeah.
in a way, even though he was in this engineering world.
So even while he was in this very technical
world of engineering.
Yeah, he was still very much seeing these deeper layers
It's a human experience.
of a human experience.
Absolutely.
So this brings up a really interesting question.
Yeah.
Could it be that his engineering background, instead of being opposite,
A contradiction.
actually helped him
Yeah. Prepared him.
on the spiritual path?
Yeah, you think about the discipline,
Right.
the analytical thinking,
Problem solving.
all of that.
Yeah.
Could those actually be assets
Yeah.
in his exploration of consciousness?
It's really challenging that assumption that science and spirituality are just
Totally.
They
They can't coexist.
can't coexist. Yeah, they're totally separate things.
It's like what we read in that article.
Yeah.
Here's why science and spirituality go hand in hand.
Right.
It argues they're essentially different approaches to understanding the same universe.
Yeah, I love that.
They're like different languages almost.
Yeah.
He uses this analogy of Spanish and German.
Oh, that's good.
They're different. They have different structures, different ways of expressing things,
Right.
but neither one is inherently wrong. They
Right.
just offer different perspectives, different ways of interacting with the world.
Okay, so science,
Yeah.
which is all about the scientific method.
Yeah. Empirical evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Replicable result.
It's great at telling us the how of things.
The mechanisms.
Yeah, how does the universe work?
The processes, the tangible workings of it all.
Yeah.
Right?
And spirituality is more about the why.
Yeah, it's like, why are we here?
Yeah.
What's our purpose?
Yeah, what's the meaning of all this?
What are our values?
Yeah, so you have...
It's about that connection to something larger than ourselves.
Okay, so you have these two approaches, which definitely have limitations.
They do.
But
they both have their limitations.
they can also work together
Yeah.
to give us this more complete picture.
Right. Instead of being these opposing forces, they could be partners.
Yeah.
In our quest for understanding.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's where I think Indian philosophy and these darshanas that we were talking about really come in.
Yeah, they offer some really insightful perspectives because they don't see science and spirituality as separate
or fighting
or conflicting. They see them as different facets of a unified understanding of reality.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Isn't it?
So do you think these ancient Indian philosophies can help us understand?
I think so.
Someone like Abhay Singh?
I think they can.
This IITian turned IIT Baba.
Yeah, let's explore that.
Okay.
As we continue our deep dive, what are your initial thoughts on all of this so far?
Yeah, let us know down in the comments.
Share them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. So, welcome back to our exploration of science and spirituality. Before the break, we were talking about how Indian philosophy could help us understand this relationship.
Yeah, these darshanas.
Right, these ancient systems of thought.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, so one of the key ideas from these philosophies is this concept of knowledge.
Okay.
Having both lower and higher aspects.
Lower and higher. What do they mean by that?
So imagine like a ladder with multiple rungs. Lower knowledge, often associated with science, that occupies the lower rungs.
Okay.
It deals with the empirical, the observable, the how of things. Understanding the physical world and its mechanisms through observation, experimentation.
So like physics, chemistry, biology.
Exactly. The sciences that help us understand how the universe works on that tangible level.
Right.
But Indian philosophy suggests that there's more to knowledge than just this empirical realm.
Okay, so there's more to it.
As we climb higher up the ladder, we encounter higher knowledge.
Okay.
And this deals with the transcendental, the experiential, the why of existence.
Okay.
It delves into questions of consciousness, purpose, meaning,
Right.
our connection to something greater than ourselves.
So it's like science gives us the tools to understand the world around us?
The material world.
Yeah, and then spirituality is kind of guiding us on that inner journey.
Your inner journey of self-discovery and connection to something beyond the material.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So this idea of higher knowledge, is it connected to that concept of transcending the ego?
It's very closely related, yeah.
Because that's something that I've always found fascinating, but kind of hard to grasp.
Yeah. It is a tricky concept.
Yeah, what does it actually mean to transcend your ego?
So think of the ego as that sense of a separate self, the I, that's often driven by desires, fears, attachments.
Okay.
It's that part of us that craves recognition, validation, control.
That voice in our heads that's always comparing and judging.
Exactly. Constantly worried about how we measure up.
Yeah.
And a lot of spiritual traditions suggest that true fulfillment comes from transcending this limited, ego-driven sense of self.
Okay.
It's about recognizing a deeper connection to something larger, whether it's humanity, nature, a universal consciousness.
So letting go of that me perspective and embracing something bigger.
A more expansive view of reality, a sense of interconnectedness with something greater than ourselves.
I like that.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This idea of transcending the ego is not just relevant to spiritual pursuits, it's also relevant to science.
Really? I don't quite see the connection there.
Yeah, so think about what's at the heart of true scientific discovery. It's about seeking truth beyond personal biases, preconceived notions,
Right.
Being willing to let go of our cherished theories if the evidence points in a different direction.
So a scientist can't be too attached to their own ideas if they really want to make new discoveries.
Exactly, especially discoveries that might challenge the existing paradigm.
Right.
A certain level of detachment, a willingness to surrender to the evidence, is crucial for scientific progress.
So in a way, both science and spirituality are encouraging a kind of humility.
Absolutely, a recognition that we don't have all the answers, that there's always more to learn and discover.
Wow, that's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it that way before.
It challenges that assumption that they're completely separate, right?
Totally.
That they're opposed.
Yeah.
They actually might share some fundamental values.
And this brings us back to Abhay Singh, right?
It does.
Because his whole transformation from this successful engineer,
Aerospace engineer.
yeah, to a spiritual seeker.
It might seem like a complete departure.
Right. But maybe there's this deeper continuity there.
Maybe there is, and I think that's where looking at specific schools of Indian philosophy can be helpful.
Okay.
Let's take Samkhya, for example. It's one of the oldest of the darshanas, and it proposes this dualistic view of reality,
Okay.
distinguishing between matter, prakrti, and consciousness, puto.
How does that relate to science and spirituality?
So Samkhya suggests that matter is inert and unconscious,
Okay.
while consciousness is pure awareness, unattached to the material world.
Okay.
The goal, according to Samkhya, is for consciousness to liberate itself from the entanglements of matter.
So that sounds a bit like what we were just talking about with ego transcendence.
It does, doesn't it?
Moving beyond our material desires and attachments
Exactly.
to recognize that deeper self.
And what's interesting is that while Samkhya acknowledges the reality of the material world, which science explores, it also points to something beyond the material.
Something that science, with its current methods, can't really grasp.
Might struggle to grasp, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it kind of provides a framework for understanding both.
Both the scientific exploration of the material world and the spiritual quest for liberation from the limitations of that same world.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe Abhay Singh's journey is kind of embodying that?
I think it could be, yeah.
He's not rejecting science, he's integrating it.
He's bringing it all together.
Yeah.
His training in logic, analysis, problem solving, maybe that's helping him navigate this inner exploration.
It's like he's applying the scientific method to consciousness.
Exactly.
He's not abandoning reason, he's using it as a tool.
A tool to go deeper.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another really interesting school of Indian thought, Vedanta.
Okay, tell me about Vedanta.
So Vedanta, unlike Samkhya, which is dualistic, Vedanta emphasizes non-dualism, often referred to as Advaita.
Advaita. Okay.
It suggests that ultimately there's only one reality, a unified consciousness that permeates everything.
So instead of separating matter and consciousness, it's saying they're interconnected.
Ultimately expressions of the same underlying reality.
And that kind of resonates with some of the things we're seeing in modern physics now.
It does, yeah, especially in quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Which is challenging our classical understanding of a separate, objective world out there.
It's all connected.
It really is.
So maybe this conflict that we perceive between science and spirituality.
It's coming from our limited understanding.
Yeah, maybe they're not actually opposed, but they're just different perspectives.
Different perspectives on the same reality, each offering valuable insights.
Like a reminder that we don't have to choose one or the other.
We can embrace both.
Yeah, we can strive for that more holistic understanding.
Exactly. The human mind is capable of embracing both the analytical and the mystical.
The logical and the intuitive.
Exactly.
We can have both.
We can.
And maybe Abhay Singh's story, as strange as it sounds, is inviting us to do just that.
I think so.
To challenge our assumptions.
To explore those intersections where seemingly disparate worlds collide.
Yeah.
To remain open to the mysteries that are out there.
It's a good reminder. It's fascinating how much Indian philosophy has to offer when we're thinking about this intersection of science and spirituality.
It really does provide a unique lens. And it brings us back to this question, could Abhay Singh's scientific background actually be a strength on the spiritual path that he's on now?
Yeah. It's something we keep coming back to. It seems so counterintuitive at first, but the more we talk about it, the more it makes sense.
Right. Think about it. The training that he has in logic, analysis, even just in critical thinking, that could actually be incredibly valuable as he explores things from a spiritual side.
Yeah. I mean, you think about so many spiritual traditions that emphasize discipline, whether it's meditation or yoga or any other practice where you really try and understand yourself.
Exactly. All those require a certain rigor. So his scientific mindset, instead of holding him back, might actually be an asset.
Right. Giving him the tools and the discipline to explore that inner world.
It's like he's taking the scientific method and applying it to the study of consciousness.
That's such an interesting way to think about it. Not abandoning reason, but using it in a new way, which also reminds me of this idea of ego transcendence.
It definitely connects to that.
This idea that real fulfillment comes when you can move past those ego-driven desires. And you start to see how you're connected to something bigger.
Right. It's about recognizing that interconnectedness. And who knows, maybe Abhay Singh's scientific training actually helped him with that process.
Oh, how so?
Well, because science, at its core, is about seeking truth. It's about going beyond your own personal biases.
Right. You have to be objective.
Exactly. A scientist can't get too attached to their own ideas. They have to be willing to let go if the evidence points them in a new direction.
To see the bigger picture.
And maybe those same skills, that detachment, that objectivity, are serving him well now, helping him move beyond just a me-centered perspective.
So he's taking the tools of science and using them in this uncharted territory of spirituality.
That's a great way to put it. And it goes back to what we were saying about Indian philosophy. These ancient systems don't create a separation between science and spirituality. They see them both as valuable ways to understand the world.
It's like they understood this interconnectedness long ago.
Right. It's a good reminder that we don't have to choose one or the other. We can embrace both.
We don't have to compartmentalize.
Exactly. We can strive for this understanding that includes all of it. Abhay Singh's story, as unusual as it is like an invitation to do just that.
Yeah. To challenge our own assumptions.
To explore those intersections where these different worlds meet. And to stay open to those mysteries that we don't have answers for yet.
It's been such a fascinating deep dive into this topic.
I agree. Really thought-provoking.
Thanks for helping us explore all of this, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and we'll see you next time.